topic that I opened up. Let me say something about the need for a revival of the Enlightenment. I've felt that for some time. I studied religious nationalism, and of course the issue there is this is a kind of moral critique against the Enlightenment. That's been going on now for some 20 or 30 years, and we're simply seeing it in increasing form. In that sense, these expressions of xenophobic politics that now are capturing centers of power are just further expressions of a movement that's been going on now for 20 or 30 years. I'm a kind of old-fashioned Enlightenment liberal myself, but I have to say that the whole artifact of the nation state on which the Enlightenment notion of politics is built is very much an ethnic artifact. I mean, the idea that nations, the state should represent a nation which is conceived of a kind of homogeneous cultural linguistic groups, which Europe was at the time, it seems to be a woefully inadequate template for the globalized world. And it's no surprise then that religious ethnic groups would want to recapture the nation state in their own terms. Well, that's not what the Enlightenment had in mind. But if that's not what it had in mind, then what is it? How do we reconceive an Enlightenment for a non-nation state world, a transnational world, which is really not the project that the Enlightenment had in mind, but the substance of it, to create a kind of moral community that's not exclusive or sectarian in some narrow way. I think that's the real challenge. That's where we need to have a revolution in Enlightenment thinking. And if you're going to provide that in your book, I will eagerly buy it and promote it joyfully. Back to what Trump has in mind and what he might become. There's been a lot of fear that comparisons with Hitler, that this is the first, after all, Hitler was elected, and then we saw kind of unraveling of democracy in the most hideous kinds of ways in Germany. Other observers have said that Trump's not smart enough to be Hitler, and maybe there's some truth to that. It's not that he's not smart, I just don't think he's interested enough in politics. He's just not ideological enough. He doesn't have any kind of ideological vision, much less of a grander, glorious super state of America. In a funny kind of way, he's a kind of empty shell. And so what will happen to Trump leadership, I think, depends not so much on Trump, but who fills that shell. And who around him, what advisors really gain his ear and become the dominant force. And the first, this horrible Flynn and this horrible Steve Bannon, the domestic and international policy advisors right now, look pretty awful. But the real influence on Trump is his own family. And his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, seems to be the one on whom he really leans the most. He was asked for Kushner to receive the CIA briefings that ordinarily presidents get. So Jared can figure, there's too much detail for him. He doesn't want to have to handle that, but Trump doesn't want to have to deal with it. But Kushner is smart, so he wants him to take care of it. Kushner's a former Democrat. He's not ideological in the way that either Steve Bannon or Flynn are, his domestic and foreign policy advisors. And the appointments, at least so far, some of the other cabinet appointments, including just yesterday, the U.S. ambassador is now going to be a Punjabi, Nikki Haley, which pleases me as a Punjabi. I'm not too crazy about her politics, but nonetheless, it's not exactly the kind of extremist alt-right appointment that we might have expected from considering his other advisors. So we don't know who's going to fill this this empty shell of Trump, but I suspect it's things may not be as hopeless as we might initially have thought.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, now it's open.